Howdy, everyone. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show happening every Thursday. Today is Thursday. It's the only way I know that it's Thursday because this happens, thankfully. Uh, I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. How's it going, guys?
Hello.
Good.
Excellent. Love to hear it. Great enthusiasm. We're off to a solid start. This week, rescheduled from a couple of weeks ago, we are talking about updating your media kit. Today, we'll be talking about the basics of a media kit, where to get the metrics for your media kit, which is probably the trickiest piece that people run into, and how often you should keep your media kit updated. Now, it wasn't until a few years ago that I even had heard the term media kit. It's not something that really existed in a more academic world. And so when I started working at the agency with Chris, I started hearing the term media kit. And I still, because I was newer to PR and, all of that, I still didn't really know what it meant. And so when we started Trust Insights, the term media kit, because we wanted to have one for the company and wanted to have one for Chris's speaking, I finally saw what a media kit was. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a little more sense, but it was still a little bit overwhelming to me because you're really, if I understand correctly, a media kit basically says, here's all the great things that somebody will get if they partner with you, if they sponsor you. Like, here's why I'm so amazing. Here's all the things I do in the digital space online, which I'm guessing at some point was more offline event things. But now it's like, I have this many followers. I'm this big of a deal here. I'm this much of a household name. People follow everything that I say. So therefore, if you pay me X number of dollars, your name will be associated with mine. Am I on the right track of what a media kit is?
You are. There's a bunch of varieties of these things. So there's an ad kit for if you're going to sell ads on your website, you have an advertiser kit. There's like a podcast sponsorship if you want to have someone sponsor your podcast. There's, of course, you mentioned the public speaking kit for people who are public speakers. They're all media kits, so it's sort of a broad generic term. And it really does come down to two things. It is here's what I can do for you. And then here's what you can do for me. So here's what I can do for you is exactly what you said. Here's the audience reach I have. Because for an advertiser, they want to know, can you put leads in the funnel? For a newsletter sponsor, a podcast sponsor, can you reach the influential audience that I care about and get them to at least be aware that I exist? For a speaker, it's can you help me put butts in seats? That really is the function. And then the other side of it is, okay, here's what I can do for you. Now here's what you can do for me, and which is fees, terms and conditions, and all that stuff. John, what about you? What's in the Marketing Over Coffee media kit?
The Marketing Over Coffee media kit is solely podcast advertising. It's a 3-page package. It talks about the show itself. There's one page that's actually, and it's great. The way I have it set up is that the second page talks about everything as far as guests that we've had on and the history of the show and all that stuff. And then the third page is actually rates and sponsor information, what the pieces go like. So the cool thing with that is I can have two versions of it. I have one that's just the first 2 pages that can go to prospective guests or people that just want to know about the show. And then for people that are actually thinking about advertising, they get the 3 pages that's got the full rate. And yeah, so every year that gets updated with the annual rates and the numbers, the stats as far as what's going on with the show. And yeah, that just gets floated out there. Anybody, makes any kind of noise about buying. And, it's funny. It's a lot like your website in a lot of ways in that, you build this thing and it means different things to different audiences. And you never really know how much a part of the purchase process it is or not, but you still have to go out and put your best foot forward and make a resource that's going to reflect your brand. And the big thing is you're going to compete against other groups. There's going to be agencies that are going to grab a stack of them and go to a client and show them all off, and they're going to make their short list, and hopefully you make that cut.
Well, it strikes me as an opportunity, because I love an opportunity, to bust out the 5P framework, because I'm hearing a lot of different use cases and user stories for why you would put together a media kit. And it sounds like the less effective media kits are the ones that are trying to reach a bunch of people in different places, where I'm guessing, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sort of newer to these pieces and assets, is that your better bet is to have a few different versions of a media kit depending on your purpose and your people and the output that you want. And so like if we are looking to get, newsletter sponsorships and speaking and, guesting on podcasts, putting that all into one place can be overwhelming and perhaps people won't know what data to look for or to get buried. So I would say, first we want to know what the heck we're doing.
You do. And a big part of that, no surprise, is so if we think about the 5 Ps, there's the purpose and there's the 2 purposes, right? There's the purpose for us, make some money. There's the purpose for the person on the other end, which is get more leads or put butts in seats at a show, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Second part is the people. And this is the part that almost every media kit, including mine, has been lacking. What you should be doing and what we may actually do today on the show is you need to build out who the people are that you're trying to appeal to, right? What is your ideal customer profile? If you watched the Trust Insights podcast this week, we looked at an example of doing a ideal customer profile there. I took some time before today's show because to do it properly is a lengthy process. So I put together an ideal customer profile for event planners for my speaking kit. And this took me about 90 minutes of gathering data, cleaning it, preparing it, and all that stuff as well. But I have that handy because the second P is the people. Who are the people? What do they care about? What are their pain points? What are their objections that they're going to have? If you say, hey, hire me to speak, like, who are you? Like, why do I care?
Why do I care?
Exactly. And then, the process of putting together the media kit, where do you get the data from? What does it look like? And then the platform, which, in this case is a PowerPoint, but it involves other technologies.
Yeah. And I think that's where having, multiple user stories. So you mentioned, there's 2 purposes, but really there's one purpose, but there's multiple personas that feed back into that purpose. So, I want to create a media kit so that I can, get hired for things. And then I want to find a great media kit so that I can hire someone for things. It's the same purpose. At the end of the day, everybody wants to get hired. Everybody wants to get sponsorships. And so it's a matter of creating those user stories, both from your perspective, but then also from the person who's taking in all of these different media kits. Because, John, you brought up a really good point is that, agencies that represent multiple companies are just like churning these out and, inundating event coordinators and podcasters and other potential sponsors with like, and here's the 800 media kits that we have. Just pick whichever one looks good to you.
Yeah, and the thing you run into with that is a lot of agencies will be like, oh, okay, this is nice, but go plug these numbers into our spreadsheet. So at least you'll have them on a single page so you can do that when that happens, because that will happen pretty frequently when you're got people shopping like that.
Yeah,
exactly. So do we want to start building or rebuilding one so we can see it in action?
Yeah, I think we absolutely do, because unsurprisingly, a lot of the questions that I have for you guys who, you seem to have a better handle on media kits is what data do people care about? And I feel like there's, depending on who you ask, there's going to be differing opinions. Some people may say, oh, we care the most about impressions, or we want to know how well you convert. I mean, pick a data point, we could throw it in there, but how do we know what data points are the most important?
Right. And it goes right back to the user story. If it is butts in seats, then your event needs exposure, and it needs exposure through essentially large groups of relevant people who are going to say, yeah, I want to go to that event. So let's take a quick look at my speaking ideal customer profile. So what I did was I took 30 LinkedIn profiles of event planners. I took a sampling of corporate ones, agency ones, independent ones, and of course, and some of the people that we work with at the events that we go to, like Marketing Profs B2B Forum, Social Media Marketing World. I put them into Google's Gemini. And I said, I want to build an ideal customer profile from these 30 LinkedIn profiles. I asked a whole bunch of questions, and here's what it came up with. Here are your firmographics based on the people that I selected, here's the company size in terms of employees and annual revenue. The location thing, it's still whiffed on there a little. Here's the technologies that those companies use. This is data that comes out of HubSpot. So HubSpot has, in its CRM software, has data available. If you give it someone's email address and it's a company email address like trustinsights.ai, it will extract what their marketing technology stack is, which is kind of handy. Then we have, what are the job functions, the job titles of the people who would be making these decisions: senior event planner, event manager, so on and so forth. What departments they work in, what their responsibilities are, experience levels, challenges and pain points. I like this section a lot. This is what do event planners care about? Limited time bandwidth constraints. Many profiles emphasize juggling multiple projects, tight timelines, and efficient execution. Overworked event planners may struggle to deliver exceptional events while managing their day-to-day workload. Does that seem reasonable to you, Katie?
It does, and it strikes me. So I was recently speaking at Social Media Marketing World with you, Chris, in San Diego, and they had what they called basically room monitors, or their concierge, where basically they were the person who worked with the speaker. And that person kept saying to me, "You're one of the easiest speakers that I've had." And you can imagine that these people, like, they're dealing with multiple speakers, multiple personalities, like all the different things and needs and wants. And, I personally pride myself on being prepared for these types of things so that I can just show up and do the thing. And I look at this and I'm like, this speaks to why they were thanking me for being such an easy speaker to work with, because they're getting pulled in multiple different directions. They have, whether they wanted to or not, given their cell phone to people who are going to use that phone number for everything they need. And so, yeah, I think overworked is 100% what the
I
problem
want a bowl
is.
of M&Ms with no green M&Ms.
Oh, but the green ones are the best.
Yeah, no, green only. That's the
green only. So yeah, we have the major pain points. We have what their goals are. They need to deliver a successful event. They need to demonstrate the event did its job. Engage attendees, streamline the planning process, stay ahead of the curve. The decision makers who influences their decisions, executives and sponsors, procurement teams, important considerations for that. What are their buying triggers, right? So when something changes, we know this just anecdotally. Once generative AI exploded on the scene in late 2022, my calendar got real full real fast because it's a major change. And so a lot of events suddenly like, hey, we need more of this. And there are internal triggers, like what are the things that would compel a company to show an event of some kind? What are the objections? Hey, your speaking fees are really high or really out of whack or something like that. What is the timeline? Is this a speaker we've ever heard of? And so on. So this is the ideal customer profile. Now, what do we do with this thing? One of the best things to do with it is exactly what you were talking about, Katie, which is let's talk to this thing and ask it what things like what data they would want. So let's go in here and say, let's talk about building a media kit today. Specifically, we're going to build a media kit for a keynote speaker. So a speaking kit to attract event planners and persuade them to hire a speaker to speak at their event. As always, the first thing you do if you're going to be doing any kind of work in a language model, start by asking what it knows. What do you know about best practices for this topic? Because we want to validate that it knows what it's talking about, because it might not. Core best practices: targeted content, professional, polished, concise and impactful, digital and easy access, key ingredients, intriguing introduction and cover letter, speaker biographies, short, long, and industry specific, high resolution headshots, speaking topics, video reel, testimonials, past engagements, social proof, contact information, things. I think this is interesting. It says, consider including speaking fees as a separate document or fees available upon request. I think that's kind of that's one take on it. Call to action, tell a story. What do you think, John?
Yeah, that's pretty solid stuff. You have a good point about, where do rates fit into this, but this is, if you're a speaker, this is a good deck.
All right. So let's say this is a good start. Today, let's start building a speaking kit using these guidelines. The person we want to appeal to is an event planner. Please examine this ideal customer profile of an event planner. And we're going to take that big old document that we just made about a couple hours ago, and in it goes. So now we have the concept and we have the audience. So we have purpose, we have people. Now we're into the process. All right. Proven ROI, expertise in the client's industry, time saving and stress reduction focus, seamless execution. So this is really, I think, useful things for the introduction letter and bios, testimonials, etc. Now, let's embarrass myself here.
Why? Because it said, let's talk design?
No. Because this is the existing one, and it hasn't been updated in a little while.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you've been busy speaking.
This is true. This is okay, but not great.
Yeah.
Great. Let me begin by providing you with some information about me, the speaker. Let's go to the Trust Insights website and get my current bio because I always forget to update it everywhere else.
I appreciate that you at least keep it updated on our website. That's nice of you.
I gotta pick one spot to do it.
Single source of truth.
Yes, if you're considering hiring me, this is the place to go get it. So I'm giving it some basic information about who I am. The other thing that I would suggest doing when you do stuff like this is to also have a writing sample of what you sound like. All right, so there's my bio. Great. Next, here is an example of my writing style and voice. Please analyze it. So this is from one of my newsletters. The reason for this is we want it to write like me and not like some generic drone.
Makes sense.
Okay. It does. You would think so, but this is the part people forget about generative AI. It is the world's smartest, most forgetful intern. So if you assume that it knows how you speak, it doesn't. It has no idea. It knows how humanity speaks. And so the results you get will always be generic if you don't provide exact examples. And the trick with writing style and tone of voice is you and I can't describe it. Like we really struggle to say, like, what is my writing style? I write. Even when the model is summarizing it, it's still not exact because there's a lot of intangibles to writing style, but you can provide an example and then you can say imitate the style and it will replicate those statistical patterns in the language without needing to spell out, here's how I write, do this, then this. All right, so let's take on this introductory letter. Great. We're now ready to begin the introductory letter in my speaker kit. Here is the current version, which needs improvement. Using our ICP, the best practices for speaker kits, and your knowledge of my writing style, draft a more compelling introductory letter based on this starting point. Let's go ahead and take this super generic intro and let's see what it comes up with.
Well, and I think that's, I love that we're starting there and not just here's all the data because, when we say this about ourselves when we write bios, we struggle to write bios for ourselves. So it's always usually helpful to have someone else write it for you. And it's true, even in this introductory, they're like, hi, I'm Chris, hire me because I'm really good at the speaking thing. That's what most of us are going to write. Hi, I'm Katie. I've been told that I'm really easy to work with, so you should hire me. That's not really compelling enough.
Exactly. So it gave It starts with a nice hook. Are you facing overwhelmed attendees in a constant battle for attention in today's information-saturated world? Let's partner to make your event a true standout. Here's me. I help businesses like yours cut the noise, data-driven insights, blah, blah, blah. In this kit, you'll discover how my talks and workshops can become your event's secret weapon. We'll explore topics like generative AI, analytics, data science, and data-driven strategy. And together, tailor a message that resonates with your specific audience. Are you ready to create an unforgettable experience? Here you go. So that's a.
I don't know, I felt like that was very Freudian.
That really was. That's an improvement already. I already feel better about this speaker kit because it got rid of the generic, and there's a reason for people to read this that resonates with what we know to be true about our ideal customer profile.
Well, it starts with a pain point, and that's something if we know humans in general are so inundated with content and offers and pitches that if we don't help them see themselves in the thing instantly, they're going to move on. So starting with a pain point in general is always a really good idea. So then go, oh yeah, that's me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we have the headshot and approved biography. This is good, but one of the things that it pointed out early on was that you want a short version of your bio too. Next, let's take our existing bio and make a short version that is 1 paragraph long, but does not lose key details that would appeal to our ICP and their audience. That is a critical sentence right there. You want to tell the model this is what's going to be important, because otherwise it will just do a general summarization, which is fine. But because you've got the ICP in there, now it goes, okay, well, what's going to matter to this audience? It goes back to those pain points and will help you revise a biography to focus on those pain points. One of the things you can do if you were doing media kits for like specific industries, you would have a different ICP for that industry. And then you say, rewrite the bio for this industry to emphasize things in your experience that matter to that industry.
Let me ask you this question, because we did this exercise for ourselves the other day in terms of the ICP and then using that data to build things. How often in generative AI do you have to check the context window, or if I'm using that term correctly? So basically, how often do you have to ask the system, do you remember what we're talking about? Do you remember the data that I gave you 90 minutes ago, or do I need to give it to you again?
It depends. It depends on the model.
What's a general like best practice? Like check in every 20 minutes or every 5 minutes, or?
It depends. So context windows essentially are the short-term working memory of a model, and they vary wildly. So the free version of ChatGPT, for example, has a context window of 8,000 tokens, give or take, which is about 5,000 words. So every 5,000 words, effectively, you have to tell it what it's doing again. And you will notice this when you're using the free version, it just starts to go off the rails. You're like, have you forgot what we're talking about? In the paid version,
it's like talking to me.
What are we talking about?
Sorry, I mean, it was right. It was right there. Sorry.
I give up.
That's how most of us feel when using generative AI. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit more of that experience.
In the paid versions, either 16,000 to 32,000 tokens, which is about 10,000 to 22,000 words. Gemini, the paid version, the workspace version, I believe is 20,000 words. And so one of the things that you can do, and you probably should do as a matter of course, is when you're using these things, particularly if they're doing anything valuable, is have the responses just sort of copy paste them into a document, in any text editor that has a word count. And as you start to get to that 20,000 word mark, you're like, okay, yeah, I need to just have you restate, summarize or explain what we're doing. That refreshes, that puts those important words back at the front of the treadmill of its short-term memory. Now, other models like Claude 3 has a context window. I believe it's 250,000 tokens. I don't remember what was from the press release, but I know it's more than Claude 2. That's about 200,000 words, 190 to 200,000 words, right? So now you're talking like this is basically 60,000 words, right? This book here by Anne Handley, Everybody Writes. So Claude is saying, I can remember 3 of these without you needing to tell me again. However, some academic studies have been done that says that Claude's ability to retrieve specific facts out of its context window degrades rapidly after about 20,000 words. So it says, in theory, it can hold 250,000, but its recallability is kind of shot. The most advanced version of ChatGPT holds 128,000 tokens, which is about 90,000 words. So ChatGPT doesn't have as big a short-term memory, but it remembers better. And supposedly, it's coming soon, Google's Gemini 1.5 model will have 1 million tokens, so about 700,000 words. So about 10 business books.
So I think that I know that it's not exactly what we're talking about today, but as we're using generative AI to assist with these kinds of activities, which we'll be doing more live streams about where generative AI fits into your day-to-day, I think it's just important to touch upon the fact that generative AI is, easily distractible. And it was like, wait, what were we talking about? And you, the human, have to remember that you're in control of the conversation, not the other way around.
And you want to be saving your documents. So one of the things I can't say this strongly enough, you need to have a prompt library. That can just be any text tool, Evernote, OneNote, SharePoint, if you enjoy Pain, Joplin, you name it. But you want to store these things because once you build an ICP, for example, you want to be able to reuse it over and over and over again without having to redo that process every time. So if you build this kind of like a recipe card, then you're ready to go the next time. Like I want to ask my ICP, my thing, an ICP question. So let's go back now. So we got the short bio. This is great. Now, keeping in mind our ICP, how would you revise my biography? And I'm just going to give it the bio again, just to be on the safe side. Yep. Let's see. We'll keep your core credentials emphasizing value delivery results in the industries you understand. Helps businesses of all sizes. 7-time IBM champion. Okay, yeah, this is good. So I might use this version or expand on this version because it is a bit more tuned for the needs of an event planner. Talking about things like bridging the gap between technical expertise and business outcomes. So that's a nice bit of wordsmithing there. Okay. So that's the dressing, if you will, in this speaking kit. The next thing, of course, you have your usual logo slide. Everyone's got this. It's not a bad thing to have. Testimonials. You do want. Yep. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, go back to the logo slide. So I'm guessing that there's more than one way to present past speaking engagements, and this is the way that you're choosing to do it. John, I know you've done media kits. Like, how do you represent past engagements or past sponsors? Do you just have a logo slide, or do you have like links or a list? Or because my brain instantly goes to, okay, let me just get a bullet list of things. But is this more compelling?
Yeah, on that front, you want to use full educational attack, right? You've got people that are visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. So if you can have some video, if you can have some audio, and then bulleted lists. You can't go full tactile, but at least, like you said, something that can easily be scanned and picked up, or a logo board. That's you kind of, I don't know, you have to hit on every front to try and get, give them an opportunity to pick what they like best and have it covered on all boards.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I like to go with the logo one only because it's very visual, and I try to aim for the events that you've probably heard of.
Gotcha. And this is where, I bring it up because I look at this and I'm instantly overwhelmed, and I'm having a hard time taking in the information. Whereas for me, just a list would be easier for my brain to process. But again, I think, John, you bring up a really good point of, we can't make the assumption about how they're going to take in the information. So our best bet is to provide it a couple of different ways.
Yep. And you'll probably have different versions of this too. So if I was doing something that was healthcare, I might have some of the healthcare events that we were at. Oh gosh, I don't even remember the name of the event. So we're just gonna skip past it. But I've done some healthcare conferences in the past, and I would rearrange these logos and add new logos for healthcare events or for travel and tourism. I was just at the tourism industry of Alberta, their association thing. So if we were doing that, I would have that here. I would have ETC, the Educational Travel Conference. I've spoken at that in the past. So you'll have variations based on which persona you're going after. Other things, testimonials. This got harder after Twitter became X, but you can still collect testimonials, particularly on LinkedIn is a good place to look for snippets to grab. And then you just want to have people saying nice things. And that's what it boils down to.
Could you use, so as a speaker, you often get speaker feedback. Could you use this event rated me, 4.9 out of 5 stars? And this was what some of the people said if you don't have people who are actively talking about you on social?
Absolutely. And in fact, that sometimes might be better. If you get feedback from the event, you can copy and paste the verbatims because they're all anonymized. So you can say, attendees of Marketing Across B2B Forum had this to say about my talk, and you have a couple of paragraphs of really nice text on there. You'd want to, design it up and dress it up a little bit, but you absolutely would want to do that. The same thing is true for if you're doing a sponsor kit for a podcast, right? You want to have people's ratings and reviews from like Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. If you've got a newsletter, when we send out the Trust Insights newsletter, it never fails. We get at least a couple of people every week emailing back in saying, hey, I really enjoyed this issue. Anonymize them, put that in there. But whatever, you always want to have some kind of social proof in a media kit.
That makes sense.
Okay, next, you have your current topics and talks, and then you have your essential numbers. And these are all going to be based on where you're active and what looks good. I need to change some of these because some of this is out of date. The other thing, for newsletters, you want to have a breakdown of who is on the list. So let me show you what that looks like, because that is slightly different. So for my newsletter, one of the things you can do is you can take your entire mailing list. You may want to hash it for securities purposes. And then there's a company that HubSpot just bought called Clearbit. If you go to clearbit.com, and you would create a free account there. You don't need to pay money for this if it decides to work. And you upload the secured version of your mailing list into it. And what it spits out is exactly this. It's just slideshow mode. It tells you who's on your list. So what size of company, B2B or B2C. So my list predominantly is B2B. It's like 2/3 B2B, 1/3 B2C. How large the companies are on that list for decision-making roles. So my list is 10.4% execs, 8% directors, 11% managers. If you care about reaching those decision makers, that's a nice stat to have, to say, like, out of this 80,000 person mailing list, 28,000 of them are senior execs of companies. That's nice to be able to say that. And then what industries they're in.
That makes sense.
If you want other...
Oh, no, go ahead.
That's it. If you want other information, one of the things you can do is as long as you did your homework in advance and your newsletter or your podcast website has Google Analytics on it, you can fish your demographic data out of Google Analytics. What are the rough age ranges, the locations, where is your audience located? So like for me, 72% of my list is in the USA, 4% is Canadian. You can get the ages, the rough age brackets. So most of my list is above the age of 35. And you can get broad interests. So you can get, let's see if I have that handy. The broad interests just tell you what kind of things, other things your audience is interested in. And that in turn helps you be able to say, like, here's kind of what our audience also likes. So here, I found it. So for my mailing list, a good chunk of people are into media and entertainment, news and politics, lifestyles, and hobbies. If I drill down into this, it's technophiles, movie lovers, entertainment news enthusiasts, TV lovers, shutterbugs, avid investors. If you're doing a sponsor kit, a media kit of some kind, and you have this information, this can start to give you some sense of which sponsors, you know, what sectors you might want to go after. If I see shutterbugs as number 5 on my list, maybe Nikon might be a sponsor, right? Maybe Canon, maybe Snap. They call themselves a camera company. But things like soccer fans, probably not as much, right? So Manchester United will not be sponsoring all the Almost Timely newsletter. It's just not a good fit.
I feel like you wouldn't turn them down if they approached you, though.
I wouldn't know what to do with them. I'd be like,
well, and that's why we have John, who would know.
Deposit the check. So.
John, so obviously Marketing Over Coffee is a big podcast that's been around for very long time. It's very established. If you're not familiar, go to marketingovercoffee.com, hosted by John and Chris. And do you have those kinds of stats for Marketing Over Coffee? Because I know that, every once in a while you'll throw me a random, what does this product look like for a sponsor? Like, is it even a legit thing? Like, do you have these kinds of sub interests for Marketing Over Coffee audience?
Yeah, although I need to do the Clearbit one, but we've done a bunch of GA stuff, and you used to be able to get better data out of LinkedIn too. Back in the day, we had a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I have a stack of stats. But it's interesting for Marketing Over Coffee. There's kind of two camps. There's the folks that want this. They're looking for tonnage. They just want thousands of listeners. A lot of Marketing Over Coffee sponsors are hardcore MarTech people, and they just want leads. Like, they could care less about the demographic as long as you're serving up 10 to 20 clicks from people that end up becoming sales qualified leads. Then they really could care less about the rest of the other stats. So it's again, it goes back to reasons why people buy. But this is, a kit like this and these kinds of stats, that's hitting the, that's the 80-20 rule. The majority of buyers are looking for this kind of stuff. And so you want to start with that. And yeah, we have a full deck. It's interesting. Like, our audience is 50% US, and then another 30% come from about 10 different countries. But I was really surprised to find that, like, we're, more than half is outside the US for Marketing Over Coffee, which is the stat that's in there. And then, having a ton of execs and decision makers is killer. That's really our value add for Marketing Over Coffee, is it's MarTech decision makers, people that are, we even had some crazy stats about companies that have 100 plus SaaS tools in their inventory. Like, that's a big chunk of our audience, people that are just trying to manage this whole cloud of stuff and how it's integrated. So yeah, if you're looking for a special audience like that's our unique proposition.
marketingovercoffee.com.
There it is. Check it out. Yeah. And another easy sell point too that I use all the time, we just have the most popular interviews. So if people don't know Chris and I, there's a page, I just send them a link, and it's like, hey, here's Seth Godin, here's Ty Pennington, here's Debbie Millman, and Simon Sinek. People can see those people and get a quick idea as far as, like, okay, yeah, this is not just the podcast I started out of my garage last week.
No, and I think that's, I'm always impressed with the, amount of celebrity status of people that you've interviewed over the years. And I think that is such a good selling point, because, again, your particular sponsors are looking for how many people can I reach in this particular industry. And that is such a huge differentiator for you.
Yeah. And like I said, being the most ancient and decrepit podcast, we have now like 17 years of Google reputation behind the URL, which is that itself is another whole selling point. Just the SEO value of getting on the site is worth something compared to everything else out there.
Well, and I think that's a unique selling point for Marketing Over Coffee, is that you are so well established. You have staying power beyond the ebbs and flows of the podcast trend. And so, like, you've been consistently, every week a new episode comes out for 15, 17 years. Like, you have that demonstrated. If they invest with you, if they sponsor your podcast, you're not just going to fold up tomorrow.
This is true. Yeah, we got in way too early. There's no doubt about that.
All right, Chris,
okay.
you've been playing around with your data. What did John and I miss?
Oh no, I was just adding in those demographics things into the newsletter kit. And then the next section is what is there, right? So for inventory at a glance, you would have the main newsletter, and there's there's headline ad, there's a first interstitial, there's the different slots, there's dedicated send, or if you wanted to buy a dedicated send to the entire list, here's an example of what one would look like. And there's market research if you want a custom piece of content done that's branded on that. And if you look at the major publications like a Digiday, for example, or The Verge, etc., they're going to have like 20 different pages of all the different types of inventory that's available for those purchases and stuff. So from a media kit perspective, I think you could have a healthy discussion about whether or not you put prices in, but at the very least, you definitely want to show examples of what inventory is available. And on the speaking side, you want to have your current topics and talks, and then what's included in the fee, right? So, for example, in my thing, if you pay full fare for a full fee keynote, you get me to hang out for the entire day that I'm speaking. You get social media promotion, get included in the newsletter, you get a promotional video clip, you get travel the day before, and the talk is going to be customized to your event. So I will spend some time, I'll spend 45 minutes in an input call with you to say, okay, who's your customer, who's your audience, et cetera, et cetera. And this goes in the speaking kit to say, like, you're not just getting a random talking head. It's going to use the exact same deck at the next 23 events. It's going to be something that's custom to your event. So I've got an event coming up in Australia in a couple months, the Australian Food and Grocery Council. I am digging into Australian food data. I'm looking at consumer price indexes. I'm looking at data from the government of Australia for its citizens. And all of that's going to find its way into the talk in the examples of how you would use generative AI as a food company there. So from a media kit perspective, you would want to use your ICP to say, what are the kinds of questions I should ask a sponsor? Like, hey, I know this is probably important to you. What data would you like to see in the presentation? So that's, we're almost at 45 minutes here. That's what goes into making a media kit these days. Is you're going to use data sources that are very common for some top line stuff. You're going to have Google Analytics data to show that you can actually measure things. You're going to have generative AI and the qualitative data you've pulled together to assemble the language, the approach, maybe even the strategy. And you're going to sew it up all together like this. And this is what you get to hand out to people when they're interested in purchasing from your media property or your speaking career.
One thing to throw out there too is that, so this is the rack rate, this is the published numbers that you put out there. So as a buyer, keep in mind that it's subject to the market. If you want Chris third week in September, those rates don't apply. Nothing applies in there. And in fact, if you have to ask the price, you can't afford him that week. But and just the opposite too, if something goes wrong, you can always cut a deal or ask for more items out of that list at a single price. All sellers are usually willing to do packaging of stuff if you're willing to buy multiple months or kind of go further than the average package. You can leverage that for price. So take that as the starting point of the discussion.
Exactly. And use your own data. I can't emphasize that enough. Use your own data in your Google Analytics account or your Matomo Analytics account or whatever, and your CRM. Particularly if you're looking at media buys, purchasing media, do a predictive forecast on your estimated leads for the next 12 months. What week in the next 12 months is going to be the weakest for you for lead generation? That's the week to then say, okay, well, maybe we should buy some media from somebody else to get some top of funnel activity the week before, or however long your sales cycle is, so that you can mitigate that impact.
Makes sense. I think the thing that always strikes me when we do these kinds of activities is you use generative AI to assist with pulling things together a little bit quicker. And the industry, the world as a whole is buzzing about generative AI and it's going to do the things, but there was so much work that went into putting together the ideal customer profile. There was and you as the speaker do the work of speaking and researching. We as the company do the work of putting together the newsletter that goes out that people subscribe to. Generative AI isn't doing those things. Those are still the human things that we're doing. We're just using generative AI to help us put it together faster. And so, when you're putting together these speaking kits and media kits, like we skipped over a lot of steps. And so, no, and I mean, because you and I, Chris, went through it the other day, and it was at least 2 hours of us sitting there going, oh, I don't know if this is right. And then we eventually got to a good result.
Well, yeah. I mean, we were pulling data out of our CRM. We were pulling data out of previous pitches that we've submitted. We were pulling data from all over the place, and the generative AI is a tool, right? Is a very powerful tool for dealing, particularly in this case, with language. It is not going to do all of the work for you. It will not be able to for a considerable amount of time. It will eventually, as AI agents accelerate. But right now, and in early 2024, you, the human being, still have to provide the data. You have to provide the ideas. You have to provide the feedback, and you have to provide the framework for the tool to operate in. And in the same way that in your kitchen, the appliances don't do the cooking for you. They do part of it, but you still have to buy the ingredients. You still got to buy the appliances. You got to know how to safely use the appliances. You've got to do the menu. You've got to do the recipes and stuff, and you've got to serve and eat the dinner. And the appliances are good. I wouldn't want to try making any number of dishes without them. Like cooking a beef Wellington without a stove is a pain, but it's not magic.
Well, and all of that to say, we're here to help. So if you're trying to put together media kits, or if you're trying to figure out how to use generative AI to do some of the things that we did, like put together an ideal customer profile, or use it to revise your existing media kits or sponsorship kits or other things, give us a shout, trustinsights.ai/contact. You can talk with the one and only John Wall. He's happy to take your call. Operators are standing by. And
no
I
project's too big, no fee is too big.
Yes.
It's Ghostbusters.
So, I think I always love these refreshers on things like media kits because they're still relevant. Despite what's going on in the industry, they're still the best way and most well understood asset to communicate, here's why you should work with me.
Yep. And like you said, generative AI is now part of your toolkit. And so you should be, as a marketer, looking at all of anything that is language based, your sell sheets, your website, your emails, your sales pitches, using the tools like we did today to refine them, right? It builds your ideal customer profile, and then take the top 5 email templates that your salespeople are sending out and ask it, how well would this email resonate with our ideal customer profile? You're going to be real surprised at the feedback you get, because it's probably going to say, wow, you're kind of pushy. Right? Or it's going to say, this is a really solid pitch to it, but you won't know until you do that work. So as Katie said, if you want to talk with us about that, you can just do the contact form. You can do the AI services form. But either way, use these tools to improve everything that you're doing, because they are capable of doing that with your guidance. Any final parting words?
Nice working with you, Dr. Venkman.
Ray, the next time someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.